Welcome to another MSSC Quick Tech. Today we'll be looking at some printhead settings, delay before and disable sensor on our TS series of touchscreen controllers. These two settings have a massive impact on print quality and consistency. So if you've been experiencing multiple prints on one product, or if the print is showing up in the wrong spot, today we're fixing both issues with these two critical SmartJet settings. Let's dive in. First, let's look at an example of what an improper delay before setting can look like. In our graphic, we can see a minor adjustment is needed to put the print in the correct placement. However, in some circumstances, you may not even see the printed image at all, but you'll notice the print count on the controller increasing with no visible print. This happens when the printer fires before the product reaches the printhead. It can also happen if the delay before is set too long and the printer fires after the product has passed. In this illustration, let's take a look at the parts that make up our delay before setting. First, notice the direction of travel. Here we see the box with an intended path moving from right to left. The second item to notice is the sensor trigger point. This is the corner of the box that starts the printing process by activating an internal or external sensor as the box moves past. Then we have delay before. Delay before is the distance between the initial trigger point and when the ink is jetted onto the object. This process typically is associated with conveyor lines where objects move past fixed position sensors and printheads. Here in this graphic, we can see the conveyor, and notice the sensor trigger points we just discussed in the last image. Let's now discuss the disable sensor settings and the two circumstances that warrant their use. One way is based off the length of the product, as we see here. This only takes into account the size of one product and is typically used when items are touching one another or relatively close to touching. This setting will ensure that for the entire set length, there will be no secondary triggers. Secondary triggers are one of the issues that can cause templates to double print. Alternatively, you can set the delay longer if items come down the conveyor or pass the sensor in a more staggered or less predictable fashion. Our graphic illustrates the distance to be between two trigger points as the disable sensor distance, but the ultimate goal is to ensure that a secondary trigger is not accepted while the last triggered print is still printing. Now that we have shown how to use the delay before setting, to adjust where a print is placed, and the setting disable sensor, to guard against false sensor triggers on objects as they pass the sensor. Let's take a look at how these settings can be used in a web application such as a roll of labels. In this graphic, we see the feed direction of the labels and tick marks that trigger our sensor. When you combine these sensor trigger points with the proper delay before distance, you get repeatable template placement on each label. Once the delay before distance is met after the sensor triggers, the printer prints the image. When working with webbed rolls of labels, you may want to set the disable sensor distance so you do not receive any false triggers resulting in double prints. Here we see the disable sensor setting set to match the distance between sensor trigger points, assuring only one sensor trigger is received. This results in one print on each label. Now that we have looked at what these settings do, let's navigate to where these settings are adjusted. From the home screen on the controller, click the gear-shaped icon in the ribbon. Once the settings open, be sure you have the top icon on the left selected. This is the head settings icon, and it is how we access the delay before and disable sensor settings. In the head settings under the alignment category, you will find the delay before setting. By clicking the number inside the field, you can adjust the setting. Remember, the delay before is the distance between the sensor trigger and when the template begins to print. Immediately to the right of the delay before setting, you will see the disable sensor field, which can be altered by clicking inside the field below it. Remember that this setting is used to tell the printer to disregard any sensor signals for the distance you specify. This setting is useful to avoid double printing due to unintended triggers of the sensor while the printer is completing the printing of a template. If you use multiple print heads in your setup, be sure they are enabled. With multiple heads enabled, you are able to adjust each head's settings independently for each print head, as long as the stitch feature is not activated. That's it. This covers the delay before and disable sensor settings in our SmartJet touchscreen series of printers. Thanks for watching, and from all of us here, happy printing! From MSSC.